I need to tell you something honestly, without filters, without the marketing spin, and without the glossy brochures that bone broth companies push into every clinic and health magazine. As a doctor, I get approached constantly. The calls come in, the emails, the offers at medical conferences. They ask me to partner with them, to promote their powders, and to feature their bone broth supplements on my clinic shelves. Some of these companies don't even hesitate to dangle big checks in front of me. They tell me how easy it would be to sit in front of a camera and smile, say a few lines about bone broth being the miracle cure for aging joints and fading muscles, and then walk away with their money. They make it sound so simple, but I've said no every single time. And I'll tell you why. Because I have seen the other side of the story. I've seen seniors walk into the emergency room thinking they were nourishing their bodies, when in reality, they were slowly poisoning themselves. I've seen broth go from being a healing tradition to becoming a hidden danger when mistakes creep in, and no glossy advertisement prepares you for that reality. Bone broth today is not just a soup. It's a trillion-dollar market. It's marketed with the kind of force that once sold cigarettes as doctor approved. There are celebrity endorsements, best-selling books, and social media influencers sipping steaming mugs and calling it liquid gold. The industry knows how to play on people's hopes, especially seniors who are desperately searching for ways to keep their joints flexible, their bones strong, and their muscles from wasting away. And don't misunderstand me, bone broth can be powerful. It can help, but only when it is made correctly, stored correctly, and consumed wisely. Because when mistakes happen, bone broth can quietly betray you. The risks aren't written on the labels of those shiny powders, and they're not whispered by the influencers cashing in on sales. They are buried under stories I've personally witnessed. Real people, real pain, real consequences. Take Margaret, for example. She was 72 when she came to me, confused and defeated. She had been making bone broth every night after reading an article about its supposed miracle effects on arthritis. She picked up cheap bones from a discount grocery store, simmered them into a soup, and drank it faithfully. She believed she was healing herself, but within months she developed fatigue, worsening joint pain, and pounding headaches. Routine tests revealed something shocking, elevated lead levels in her blood. She was being poisoned, not healed. The very broth she trusted had carried heavy metals from low-quality bones into her system. And because seniors don't detoxify as efficiently as they did in their youth, that poison was accumulating inside her. Her story is far from rare. Factory-farmed and conventionally raised bones often harbor antibiotics, hormones, and heavy metals that leach into broth during long simmering. Margaret thought she was nourishing herself, but she was slowly weakening her body. The solution was simple: switch to high-quality, pasture-raised organic bones. But the lesson was devastating. A small mistake at the very start of the process turned what should have been medicine into a toxic threat. Richard's case was different but equally revealing. At 70 years old, he was a practical man who didn't like wasting anything. Every Sunday, after roasting chicken for his family, he would boil the leftover bones, thinking he was making a healing broth. He proudly told me how diligent he was, how he never let those bones go to waste. But over time, he noticed something unsettling. His knees grew stiffer, not looser. His joints ached more, not less. He felt disappointed, even cheated, until his daughter, a nutrition student, explained the missing piece. He was only using stripped bones, no joints, no skin, no cartilage. And therein lay the problem. The healing compounds in broth don't come from hard bone alone. They come from connective tissue, from tendons, ligaments, skin and cartilage that dissolve into collagen, gelatin, and amino acids like glycine and proline. These are the building blocks that seniors desperately need, because after 60, the body's natural collagen production falls sharply. That's why wrinkles deepen, muscles weaken, and joints grind. When Richard switched his recipe to include chicken feet, wings, and skin, everything changed. His broth turned thicker, gelling when cooled, a sign of true collagen richness. Within weeks, he felt the difference. His morning stiffness began to ease, and the broth started delivering on its promise. What he thought was bone broth before was nothing more than flavored water. But even when the right bones are chosen and the right tissues included, another mistake waits in the shadows. Time. I met Alice, 69, a cheerful woman with a love for cooking but very little patience. She loved the idea of bone broth, but hated the thought of leaving anything simmering overnight. So she would boil her chicken bones for 2 hours, strain the liquid, and drink it every morning. She told me she expected miracles but saw none. Her joints still ached, her energy was low, and her digestion was unsettled. To her, bone broth was a scam. But when her neighbor suggested she try a slow cooker and leave it simmering overnight, Alice finally saw what real broth could be. Her pot transformed into a rich, golden, gelatinous liquid. And within weeks, her stiffness lessened, her digestion improved, and her faith in the healing tradition was restored. Science backs this up. Nutrient release from bones is slow, requiring 12 hours or more for chicken and up to 24 for beef. Anything less, and you're not making broth, you're making flavored water. Seniors who cut corners on time rob themselves of the very benefits they're seeking. Even when the broth is cooked long enough, danger can still creep in if you ignore what rises to the top. Gerald, 74, was a faithful broth drinker. He made large pots, sipped them daily, and took pride in his routine. But he never skimmed off the fat or foam, assuming it was all part of the nutrition. After several months, his cholesterol began to climb, and his doctor warned him that his heart health was in danger. What Gerald didn't know was that the fat layer often carries oxidized lipids and inflammatory proteins. Leaving it in the broth turned something restorative into something harmful. When Gerald's daughter taught him to skim the foam as it cooked and to remove the hardened fat cap after chilling, everything changed. His cholesterol began to drop, and his broth became cleaner, healthier, and easier to digest. Seniors with already fragile digestion and cardiovascular risk cannot afford to ignore such a simple step. But perhaps the most common and most silent danger lies in something almost everyone does without thinking: adding salt. Joan, 71, loved flavor. Her homemade broth always included bouillon cubes, generous pinches of salt, and a pantry of seasonings. It tasted wonderful, but after a few months her ankles swelled, her blood pressure rose, and tests revealed sodium overload. She was stunned. What she thought was healthy broth was quietly stressing her kidneys and heart. Seniors are already vulnerable to hypertension and kidney strain, and bone broth becomes a hidden salt bomb when carelessly seasoned. Joan learned to replace salt with fresh herbs, garlic, ginger, and lemon. The flavors grew richer, and her blood pressure returned to safer levels. Her broth finally nourished her instead of betraying her. And then there is the deadliest mistake of all, the one almost every senior makes without realizing it: storing broth too long. Helen, 75, loved making large pots of bone broth and keeping them in the fridge for the week. She would reheat a bowl every night, thinking it was strengthening her body. But one evening, after drinking broth that had sat for 6 days, she woke up violently ill. At the hospital, doctors discovered she had food poisoning from bacteria that had quietly grown in her broth. For a younger adult, it might have been uncomfortable but survivable. For Helen, with her weaker immune system, it nearly cost her life. Broth can harbor bacteria like listeria even in the fridge, and after 3 to 4 days, the risk grows significantly. Seniors are 4 times more likely to die from foodborne illness than younger adults. The solution is simple. Consume refrigerated broth within 48 to 72 hours and freeze the rest in small portions. Frozen broth can last for months, and it's easy to reheat safely. But too many seniors push the limits, not realizing that the broth that looks and smells fine may already be dangerous. Over the years, I've watched these mistakes repeat themselves in one patient after another. Some came to me confused, wondering why their broth wasn't working. Others came to me sick, poisoned by shortcuts they didn't even know were harmful. And every time I refused a sponsorship from a bone broth powder company, I thought of them. I thought of Margaret with her lead poisoning, Richard with his weak broth, Alice with her patience problem, Gerald with his unskimmed fat, Joan with her salt overload, and Helen with her week-old leftovers. Their stories are why I won't take money to pretend bone broth is magic. It isn't magic. It's powerful, yes, but only when respected. Bone broth can truly transform health. When made correctly, it delivers collagen to aching joints, minerals to fragile bones, amino acids to tired muscles, and soothing compounds to the digestive tract. It can help seniors regain energy, reduce stiffness, and feel stronger. But when made with shortcuts, carelessness, or ignorance, it can quietly harm the very people it was meant to help. That's the truth the industry doesn't tell you. They don't profit from warning labels, so they won't add them. But I will, because I've seen too much to stay silent. So now I turn the question to you. Do you drink bone broth? Have you ever made one of these mistakes without realizing it? Have you trusted a shortcut that might have cost you more than you knew? Share your experience because you're not alone. Seniors across the world are learning the truth, and together we can protect each other. And if you're new to this, if you've never tried broth, let this be your guide. Start with clean. High-quality bones include connective tissues. Simmer long and slow, skim carefully, season wisely, and never store it longer than 3 days in the fridge. Freeze what you can't finish. Do this, and your broth will heal you. Ignore it, and your brother may betray you. I've said no to every company that asked me to lie. But I'm saying yes to you right now by telling you the truth. Stay safe, stay strong, and let your broth be medicine, not poison.